Hello and welcome to Medieval Survival Guide. In today's video I'm going to revisit the so-called Thief Masterclass video I've posted some time ago and correct some of the misinformation I have in there, as well as complete the facts that are right. Most of the things stated in the previous video will be repeated, so get ready to hear the same information twice if you already watched that one. Today you will learn all of the essential skills needed to become a wealth redistribution officer. So, if you are an honorable person who respects the property of your fellow Bohemians, you'd best close this video now. You're still here? Good. Let us begin. So you've completed a prologue, got beaten to a bloody pulp, and now you're in the miller's house. Put some clothes on, grab your gear and your money, and have a chat with the guy. He'll tell you that you were on your sickbed for a very long time and you have a debt to pay, which you can pay with whatever money you have, boring, or you can take on the job he gives you. The job involves the acquisition of a ring from the town executioner. This can be done in two ways. The quick way is to purchase the ring from the executioner with 20 groschen, while the slow method requires the theft of this ring. A feat that cannot really be accomplished during the day, so if you choose to do this, you will have to wait for nighttime. And then you will have to sneak past the dogs, pick the lock to the front door, break in, pick the lock to the chest, and sneak out, all without waking the guy up. Before you depart, ask Peszek to teach you how to pick the lock. It's pretty easy actually, but I will give you my own tips and tricks later on. So how do we steal that ring? Well, let's start with sneaking. In order to effectively sneak, you will need to wear clothes that are lightweight and don't make any noise. These are the clothes you will need to acquire later on in the game, but you will be unable to afford them early on, in time for your first burglary mission, so we'll have to use the ones we took from that one particular bandit in Skalitz. If no better options are available, you can also strip into your underwear, because the most important aspect is to have the noise stat as close to 0 as possible. If the clothes are dark and they have a low visibility stat, that's even better, but since you're robbing a sleeping person, he won't be seeing you unless you wake him up with noises, in which case you've already failed as a thief. The one thing you can do to actively lower the amount of noise you make is to press caps lock and sneak around slowly. Slowly crawl about while paying attention to your surroundings. Once your sneak skill increases, you can start sneaking faster without making additional noise. And you can increase this skill by either sneaking past enemies or knocking them out, or just doing regular thief stuff such as lockpicking or pickpocketing. All of these activities increase your stealth, so you'd best dedicate some nights to just practice. Now back to the executioner. You need to sneak past his dogs, so pay attention to them. If you see them wake up, they'll begin barking, alerting their owner to your presence. And his curiosity will push him to investigate what's going on outside, so you'd best back away until things calm down and he goes back to sleep. You may also try to appease the canines by throwing them some meat, but that won't always work. But if the dogs don't seem to react, you're in the clear. Proceed to the door and pick its lock. Peszek already showed you how to do it, but it's time for me to give you my own advice. Now this is the part of the tutorial where I explain all I have learned about lockpicking, so pay attention. If you've watched the previous video, you'll find that I'm repeating a lot of stuff that I explained there. Anyway, the most important thing you need to know about lockpicking is that if the pick snaps, it makes a loud noise that can alert people that there's a thief nearby. And the lower your skill, the higher the probability of failure, especially if the lock is more difficult to open. Locks are put into 4 tiers. Very easy locks can be opened at any skill level. Easy ones require at least level 1 or 2 in lockpicking. If they're hard, you need around level 5, while very hard locks can only be opened after your expertise is over level 10. There are exceptions, of course, but this is the general guideline. Still, don't worry too much about all of this, because if a lock is beyond your skill level, you'll see this message appear, and you'd best leave it alone and return when you're a better locksmith. There are times when I spend entire nights just being a serial door unlocker, quickly going from door to door, picking them open in order to reach level 9 as fast as I can, so I can obtain access to the Silent Fiddler perk. Other perks that I take are Lasting Lockpicks at level 3 and Deft Grip at level 6, but the Silent Fiddler skill is of utmost importance. For even if the pick doesn't break, this action can still make enough noise to wake up someone if he's close enough to a trunk you're trying to open. If you're in this situation, don't even attempt unlocking that chest until you obtain this perk. The fiddler skill also reduces the sound of your failed lockpicking attempts, so it greatly minimizes the risks involved in this job. Now that we're done with skills and perks, let's also add some tips and tricks that I've shared in my first video. Most of us are already familiar with the mechanics of lockpicking, but I feel the need to explain them once again, so that even the newest of players will know what I'm talking about. When you ask the miller to teach you lockpicking, he'll say this.
Now try poking around in the lock with the pick until you feel the right point where the tumbler is.
And when you start moving your cursor around, you will notice the sphere getting bigger. When it's golden, you're close to the sweet spot, and when it's the biggest and shines the brightest, that's the exact position of the tumbler. As you turn the lock and the pick, you'll notice the indicator beginning to shake more and more, but if you keep your cursor on the sweet spot, you should be fine. Now, it's time to share my golden trick. If you're having trouble turning the mechanism and you feel your lockpick is about to break because the lock keeps jamming, you can actually reset the whole process by quitting it and starting all over again. Resetting a lock magically repairs your pick and it repositions the sweet spot. For me, it's harder to turn the lock if the tumbler is on the outer edge because I have to complete a wider motion, but if I reset the lock, I can get the sweet spot closer to the center, where I have an easier time turning the lock because I can move my wrist in a smaller circle. Knowing this was especially important when the game just launched and lockpicking looked like this. But since the additional indicators were added, lockpicking got easier. Don't get me wrong, the mechanic hasn't changed, but just the fact you now have a visual way of knowing the position of the tumbler makes it easier to track as you turn the mechanism. Some people reported that they find lockpicking harder when the tumbler is closer to the center, so you don't need to follow my guide 100%. Find the position you're most comfortable with and keep resetting the lock again and again and again until the sweet spot is in a position you can work with. And if you see that this lock is too difficult, return when you're more skilled. But this was it for the lockpicking tutorial. We can now continue with a mission the miller gave us. You've snuck past the dogs, you've picked the lock on the door, you saw that the executioner is asleep, and you've stolen the ring, and whatever other valuables he had around. You've also hopefully steered clear of that chest because you don't yet have the Silent Fiddler perk. Now that you have the ring, you take it to Peshek and his services as a fence become available. And that is very important in survival difficulty because he's the only vendor that will pay you a decent price for your items, and he'll buy them even if they're stolen. Now I'd like to have a word about how traders work in hardcore mode. In my previous video I said vendors pay you less and charge you more. What actually happened does not affect your barter skill, but the way reputation works. See, in the normal difficulty you can give merchants discounts on your sold items and tip them when you buy stuff, and that increases your reputation with them, and over time the trader likes you more and gives you more money in the long run. But in hardcore mode, no matter how generous you are to these vendors, your reputation with them can never increase. I may be wrong, but that's what I noticed in about 40 hours of playing on this difficulty. But your reputation can decrease, however, and as such, you should curb your greed when it comes to bargaining with them. What you want to do is give the trader an unreasonable offer, and as he drops his price, you want to immediately match it. If you insist and he doesn't like your offer, you will permanently lose reputation and his prices will get worse in the future. Once you obtain the final offer perk in the speech skill, you can afford to take more risks when it comes to bartering. So even if you plan on playing as an honorable knight, you will need Peshek as a vendor and you should accept his mission and just buy the ring off the executioner. It doesn't cost you your honor, just 20 groschen. But completing this mission has additional benefits, one of which being the privilege of learning the art of pickpocketing from the miller. He will teach you the basics, I will expand on that. Before we get into the technical aspect of pickpocketing, you need to know that engaging in this activity carries a very high risk of getting caught in the act. Sometimes you can even be caught in the first millisecond of the process and there's nothing you can do about it except face the consequences. Or reload to an earlier save if that's your thing. With the warning out of the way, we can now talk about how to actually do it. I have partitioned pickpocketing into 3 separate stages, all of them happening very quickly. The first is the groping stage, where you touch your victim's pockets all over to get a feel for the valuables inside. In order to successfully pick a pocket, you will have to keep groping for a while and pay attention to this interface element. First, your progress bar will need to reach this notch, at which point the circle may change color. If it doesn't and it stays red, you're dealing with a vigilant target and you'd best cut your interaction short. But if the color turns green, you can keep groping until you see it turn towards red. You'll also see some digits which indicate the number of seconds you will have for stage 2, the snooping stage. For example, if you're groped for 5 seconds, you will have 5 seconds to rummage through your target's pockets. In stage 2, this big circle represents your victim's purse, the door icon shows the entry point into the purse, the golden ring that moves around represents your hand, and the question mark icons illustrate hidden items. While you're snooping, your hand has to navigate to each of these items and reveal them by pressing E. If you don't see any valuables, you can navigate back to the entry point and leave empty-handed. You can try again if you want. But if the item has been revealed as something you like, such as money or a key or a potion, you can extract the item by pressing E again, navigating to the entry point and pressing E once more. Extraction is the third stage, by the way, and it's entirely optional because the more you steal from a person's purse, the more perceptive he'll become over time. And if you want to strip him of his valuables, leave the torch and the carrot behind. Actually, you can take them as well if your goal is to increase your skill. Here's an interesting thing I learned about extraction while I was preparing this tutorial. You can actually grab multiple items from a person's inventory, and if you're skilled enough, you may empty his pockets in one go. Be careful with this, however, because each item you grab reduces the snooping time and you risk getting caught. Earlier on, I said that if your target is too perceptive, you should cut the interaction short. What I mean by that is if you see the circle staying red after the threshold is passed, you can quickly cancel groping, and when you're launched into the 2 seconds of snooping time, just press E on the door icon and leave. Don't try extracting anything. You can also cancel pickpocketing during the first stage if you release the key before the progress bar reaches the notch. One last thing I have to say about pickpocketing is that when you reach a high level in this skill, you will have to spend less time groping and you'll have more time for snooping. As you can see, the numbers charge faster. Now that you know stealth, lockpicking and pickpocketing, let us discuss gear you will need as a stealthy Henry. Besides the lightweight dark clothes, you're going to want to carry a dagger to stick it into unsuspecting humans and bandits. And you will also need a horse. I wholeheartedly recommend Trojan because he is affordable and he can carry a lot of loot. You will need to cough up 1500 groschen and you can purchase him from the Neuhof stables as soon as you can afford it. As I've said in a previous video, just go east of Rattay and you'll get there. You will need a horse not only for quick transport and increased carry capacity, but also because he's your get out of jail free card. If you cannot afford a horse quite yet, you can steal one, but you cannot use a stolen horse for additional storage. And you also cannot let anyone see you mount up, or it will get reported as a crime. Surprisingly, when you're already mounted up, people don't realize the horse is stolen and they don't report you. So, if early on you use a stolen horse, park it far away from other people. And always be prepared for the possibility of the horse leaving you. Now, if I didn't quite make myself clear, stealing has consequences, especially if you get caught. I hear some confusion in your mind. If you get caught? You mean there are consequences even if you don't get caught? Yes. The answer to that question is yes, so let me clarify. While in the loading screen you may sometimes see this tip, allow me to read it out loud. Even if you're not caught red-handed, your crimes will make people bad-tempered, and angry guards are more likely to search you. That means if items go missing, people will not necessarily know it was you, but since you're a new arrival in their town, you're a prime suspect for the crimes you totally didn't commit. And if things disappear, guards may stop and search you, and if a thief planted stolen items in your pockets or in your horse's saddlebags, the guards will seize them. The chances you're randomly searched increase if you're wearing the dark clothes because their conspicuousness stat is low. So in the guard's mind, the more inconspicuous you try to appear, the more likely it is for you to be a thief. If you happen to carry objects that totally belong to you and you get searched, you can bribe the guard to leave you alone this time. 20 coins is nothing compared to the emotional value of that jewelry that totally doesn't belong to anyone else. If you are caught committing a crime, the guards will come running for you. This is what a horse is for. You should always park your horse somewhere on a road, and if you get caught and the police start chasing you, run to your horse and saddle up. You can force your horse to gallop as soon as you start mounting, so go, get lost. Run to the nearest inn or tavern or home. There you will find a loot chest, which you can use to store the items that you totally didn't steal. If you get apprehended with stolen goods, they will be seized and you will have to either pay a heavy fine or go to jail. If you do manage to escape justice, you will be wanted in the town in which you caused mischief, your wanted status being indicated by this icon. If you see this icon, you will most likely have to pay a fine, but if you stay out of town long enough, the guards will eventually forget about you. However, the people of the town won't forget and your reputation with the citizens can drop to the point of them refusing to even acknowledge your existence. If you get in this situation, you can repair your relations a little if you submit to arrest and go to jail instead of just paying the fine. But if you commit some more heinous crimes such as assault or, God forbid, murder, you will see this icon instead of the previous one. And it indicates that you can't pay your way out of this problem. Jail time is mandatory, and because you will be imprisoned for a very long time, certain quests may fail because people won't wait for you to serve your sentence. Look, we're thieves. Don't murder anyone, it's bad for business. With all that said, I have to confess that in my very first playthrough, when I had no idea what I was doing, I had to break the no murder rule because of a mistake I made. See, I saw this well-dressed gentleman traveling all alone, and because I wasn't confident in my ability to pick pockets, I decided to put the guy to sleep so I can take his stuff. But the problem is, he's seen my face right before I committed the crime, and when we had a reunion in the town square, he started attacking me. Unable to defend myself without having the city guard intervene and accuse me of assault, I had to run out of the city. In his seething hatred, the Ratai tailor chased me blindly into a more secluded location where I finally pacified him. Forever. I nearly forgot to say one important thing about your loot. Stolen items have this icon on them to indicate that they don't quite belong to you. If you look at the details of the item, you will also see the location where you stole it from. No merchant in their right mind will purchase an item that was stolen in his hometown. But if, for example, you stole an item in Ujits, you may be able to sell it to a merchant in Sasau. Some merchants will reluctantly purchase stolen items from you, especially if you invest in the trustworthy middleman perk, but they don't pay full price.
Don't expect me to pay full price.
If you want to sell stolen goods, do it at a known fence or store them in your loot chest at home. Eventually, their stolen status disappears over time, as you can clearly see in this example with the clothes I've stolen from Deutsch back in Skalitz. Anyway, I have one last trick to share with you before ending the video. Pet food potion. That's what you can use to jumpstart yourself into a life of crime to minimize the risks early on when your skills in skullduggery are undeveloped. I don't care whether you buy it or steal it or brew it yourself, pet food potion is a very important beverage that will make your misdeeds easier to accomplish. When ingested, it will steady your hand and remove any anxiety which arises from engaging in illegal behavior, effectively increasing your stealth, lockpicking and pickpocketing skills for 10 minutes. I once used 2 of these potions back to back to score the biggest heist ever, robbing the alchemist, tailor, armorer and swordsmith in Rate, all in one night. Needless to say, nothing was unaffordable for me after that. Because of its legal implications, alchemists in big towns won't sell this potion, but you can find it at herbalists outside of town. If memory serves me, this is the location where I bought the recipe. I'll mark it on your map. Okay, we're pretty much done. Let's revise what I've taught you so far. How to sneak, pick locks, and steal from pockets. I also told you what equipment you need to effectively do your job and how to deal with the consequences of getting caught. Well, needless to say, every time you go on a stealing spree, you'd best activate Henry's prophetic sight by drinking a savior schnapps if you want to avoid facing the consequences of your crimes. One final idea I can add is that you need to train and increase your skills if you want to get good at it. You won't rob the weapon store in your first night or your second or your third. You need to practice these skills and, if something is too hard, leave it and return when you're better. And when you begin pickpocketing, do it on drunks and sleeping folk. And stay away from merchants or guards because they're perceptive and they will catch you if you just look like you're about to touch their purse. Stick to townsmen and villagers, and when your skill is high enough, you can even start picking pockets in broad daylight, especially with this perk. But this was it for today. I hope you learned something and you enjoyed the video, so thank you for watching and we'll see each other next time. Goodbye.
So you better keep that in mind.
I didn't know that. My apologies. Go ahead.